Hi, it's Josh, your Goth Fragrance Bestie. I believe perfume is a language that speaks to us, not in words and colors, but in emotions and memories. In Goth Fragrance Dialogues, we will be listening to the people who channel and craft that language for us. In this episode of Goth Fragrance Dialogues, I traveled to Nashville, and we'll be hearing from JK Robbins of Closet Perfumery. Thank you for sitting down with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining Goth Fragrance Dialogues. For those who are unfamiliar, since you're a relatively new brand, can you introduce yourself?
Hello, I am JK Robbins of Closet Perfumes, an indie niche house outside of my hometown of Nashville, Tennessee.
What is your first memory tied to scent?
My first memory tied to scent starts in the kitchen. I grew up with a mom from a large Polish-Italian family, and lots of cooking would go down every night and home every time we went to any of my aunt and uncle's houses in Modesto, California. My grandmother's house, I would always be in the kitchen with them while they cooked. So the aroma of sauteed onions and garlic and peppers going into the, secret family pasta sauce, that would just waft through the entire house. So whenever you would walk into my mom's house, growing up, boom, that's where that would be. My grandmother's house, boom, there that would be. Slightly different though. You could tell subtle differences because, like with any big Italian family, nobody agreed to do the same thing the same way.
Right.
So everybody's sauce recipe was the sauce recipe, but it was totally different. And always their way was the right way and everybody else's was the wrong way. I haven't had a bad one yet, so, but that's the first memory of scent for me.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Would you mind sharing some of your journey into the world of perfumery?
Yeah, of course. The journey into the world of perfumery for me starts with my introduction to perfume, and I have only my sister Katie to thank for that. She's 6 years older than me, so she kind of pointed me in the right direction for a lot of things. Thank you, Katie. And when I was 14, she introduced me to Joop Home, and I was enamored with it. Like, going from teenage deodorants to that, and this was before Axe, so most of the deodorants, it's like you had, Brute deodorant.
Dracar Noir.
Dracar Noir deodorant, or, some sporty lime smelling thing. And then Joop was something completely different. But it was still a very, very strong. And a few months later, she introduced me to Terry Mugler's Angel Men, because it had just come out like a year or two prior. And she wore Angel. She was like, I'm going to get this for you. And I then had Mugler blinders on for a good 20 years. Yeah. So that's the introduction into perfumery. Like, I got all of the flankers, all the Amen flankers, the slew of them that came out, like 1 or 2 a year. So I didn't think I needed anything else until I found out that L'Oreal bought the company, and that's why they were all disappearing. And this was like only a few years ago when I realized this. In the same month, maybe even 2-week span, I noticed that a friend of mine, Lee Noble, was making his own perfumes as like high concept art. And I never knew Lee could do that. I knew him as a musician, amazing visual artist, but he started a thing called X Perfumes, and by the time he was talking about his third one, I was like, what? Hold on, you can how can you do this? Because I no longer have an outlet for getting smells that I want, or at least that's what I thought. And yeah, he told me, check out the Institute of Art and Olfaction, check out Perfumer's Apprentice, and it's up to you to do the rest. So that was how I fell down that rabbit hole, and fall hard I did.
So is it fair to say that L'Oreal buying Mugler is what led you to establish Closet?
That and stumbling across Lee's perfume releases. Those two things together is what did it.
It's like a 9/11 My Chemical Romance.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so many things just...
So moving towards kind of the creative process and your brand itself, what significance does the name Closet hold, and how does it reflect the brand's identity?
Let's see. Let me look in the video there. Well, that's the closet. I don't know if you can see it. It looks just like that one.
Yeah.
Once I came to those realizations and realized this could be an endeavor that I could get into, I sat at my desk and looked around the room and tried to figure out where I would find space, because this room looked entirely different 2 years ago. I wasn't doing much with that closet. I was storing soccer jerseys that I collected in it, and I was like, oh, I could get rid of those pretty easily, move them somewhere else. And I don't know, take a keyboard stand and this plank of wood, and it'll be like a standing desk, a makeshift standing desk, and this is gonna be where I make my perfumes. On this small keyboard stand in a tiny closet. And they say write what you know, so I figured since everything was going to be coming out of that closet, I was going to just call it Closet Perfumes, or just Closet. So I looked into, company names and whatnot. You don't want to step on any toes with the same trademark brand names and things like that. There was a Closet London that sold clothing and beauty supplies, so I was like, is that overlapping? I don't know. Fine, I'll just stylistically take out the vowels. And I was floored, my jaw hit the floor, because I was staring back at the name of the band that I started the year that I got Angel Man. When I was 15, that's what I forgot to get. I was going to show you that. When I was 15, I started a band called CLST. The synchronicity, you can't, that cements it. You can't pick a different name. So Closet, spelled that way, it is, and forever it shall be.
Right. So can you delve kind of into the stories behind your two launch fragrances? So there's Marginalia and Humidors of Perception.
Yeah, Marginalia, it had iterations. The first idea I got was playing with some of the first materials that I picked up, and it was Aldamber and Hivernal Neo, and smelling those together with a couple other things, I was like, okay, yeah. I get like the inside of an air conditioner at the book attic. Yeah. I don't know where else it could go from there. So it was called, like, I gave it a name. I called it In the Air of Your Ways is what I called it. So just puns, just wordplay. And I found that, like, giving something a name, because when you give something a name, you give it power, it would take it into a completely different direction. So I gave it that name, and it only took me so far. I was like, well, I want to focus more on the books. I love the book aspect of, the book attic, and Rhino Books and Bookman Bookwoman and all these other bookstores that I would frequent. So I was like, let's focus more on the books. So it became In the Stacks. Like that stack right there of just old, dime store novels. Then I got a few ideas while I was making the Accords, thinking back to Wings of Desire, where the two angels are walking through the library in Berlin and like peeking over people's shoulders, writing in notebooks or reading books and discussing relationships and things like that. So I knew that's kind of where I wanted to take it. More of a. I still wanted the atmosphere, but also the book. And that's when the book Accord just opened up, and it took me to a memory of my own at my grandparents' house, in my grandfather's reading room, floor-to-ceiling books. And every time I would stay there, I would eat breakfast using this leather Egyptian ottoman as a table in his reading room that was stuffed with 40-year-old newspapers. And when I hit that with the Accord, when that's where I was like whisked back to, I knew that's exactly it. Like, it was pretty much done. There was one thing that wasn't 100% though, and I'm gonna give my wife credit for that. She gave me an alternate name for it, and she was like, why not Marginalia? And yep, that's what was missing. Thank you so much.
I find the story of that makes so much sense because Marginalia, Sunspheres, Hodges, and even like Clue's Warm Bulb all have this amazing nostalgic atmosphere to them where they immediately take whomever is smelling it back to a moment in their history. So it's very cool that it started there for you and is now sharing that for everyone else.
Yeah. I mean, and when I talk about humidors in a second, like hearing what other people have to say about it is the best part. And I'll circle back to that with humidors. With humidors of perception, I think that people need to know that it is not only an opportunity for perfumers to play, but I feel that it's a duty for perfumers to play. Humidors of perception was a happy accident that came out of playing. When I got my first set of aroma materials, I really, really wanted to make the smell of one of my favorite teas. So I found 5 or 6 materials on paper, scent strips. Okay, yeah, I get it. So I started playing with those materials. Did not smell the same at all. I tried different amounts, couldn't make it work. What did come out of playing was another memory that I had. Like, unlocked my first trip to a cigar store where I went to the back into the walk-in humidor and was in this, humid room full of paperboard and cedar boxes, just full of cigars of various shades, all in tobacco leaf wrappers. And some of them were super dark, like almost black, and unwrapped so I could pick them up and just smell them. I made a few purchases, exited the humidor, into this room of dudes smoking cigars and pipes and things. And when I left the store, I could still smell it, not only on my clothes, which I kind of expected, but even on my skin. And it was kind of like this honeyed nuttiness. So I knew I was going to base it off of that memory. And again, when you give something a name, it changes it, it does something, it points it into a direction that you may not have realized. I called it Humidors of Perception because, again, wordplay. The Aldous Huxley book, Doors of Perception, which Jim Morrison took the name The Doors from. It was a old journal about mescaline use. So kind of jokingly calling it humidors of perception. I was like, okay, wait a minute. I can work with this. This gives me something different, a little bit more. It gives it that edge that, you know, I think most perfumes need to get beyond being one note.
Right.
And that was this image of it being 1967. Jim Morrison, sweaty after a show, comes off stage in green leather pants, walks into a tobacconist to buy a stogie. I wanted to capture that image. And, you know, there are these photos of Jim Morrison with cigars. They're more than I thought. Like, I remember seeing a couple, but when I looked up Jim Morrison cigar, I'm like, oh, perfect.
It's funny that that's the image, because I know when we were messaging, when I first initially smelled it, I was like, the leather is like almost bell peppery, and you were like, yeah, it's a green leather. And that was like that locked it. I was like, oh, okay, legitimately green leather.
Yeah. So that's how playing, you know, just an idea about tea into Jim Morrison's pants. I don't know.
Is that what you would describe as kind of your creative process? You look at the raw materials, you see what it elicits in you, and then build from there?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Everything that I've made so far either had a name almost to begin with, like a name to kind of start it off, or an idea that two materials that I was just playing with ended up, yeah, eliciting.
Very cool. What role do you feel that Nashville's culture and environment play in your creations?
I'm a Nashville native, so this answer could seem slightly embittered. Growing up in and around Nashville throughout my entire life, those are the memories that I can base my perfume around. But that Nashville doesn't exist anymore the same way that it was. If you talk to lots of people who are from the area, they can definitely tell you about what is old Nashville and what is new Nashville. And there have been so many creatives that have moved here, and that's been a great thing for the city. And it has also helped unlock more creative opportunities, like opening up a perfumery, for example. But they were lured here from other places with a repurposed and repackaged image that I feel is sold to them by out-of-town developers, which keep on changing the Nashville that I grew up with. So there is still a creative spirit in Nashville that does have an effect on me, but the memory aspect, it's just a different place.
So more of a sounding board and less of a recall.
Yeah.
Gotcha. JK hates refinery. No. No, I'm kidding. We'll cut that.
John, Mercedes? No. You know I love you.
Yeah, that's just...
No, I mean, like, that is one of those instances that where, like, New Nashville has opened up that opportunity. Because up until that point, you know, what did I have but the mall? Like, I had literally,
Right.
You just came from Green Hills. Think of that place without LaJeté. It was just Macy's, Nordstrom, Sephora, the end.
Right.
And then a suburban Ulta here and there. And all of that had the same DNA. Like I coming from it with Mugler blinders on and going, oh, what is available to me? Everything kind of smelled like it had the same DNA. It was very clean. It was very young, and all mass appealing. Even the things that were supposed to be sophisticated still kind of smelled a little, you know, youthful.
I mean, joking aside, I do find that an interesting line between you and John is musical history introduced via a very iconic designer fragrance, and then kind of funneling into the very broad world of like niche perfumery beyond that. His being the boutique,
Yeah.
yours being your own brand.
Yeah.
As a self-taught perfumer, what are some resources and experiences that were pivotal to developing your craft?
The Institute of Art and Olfaction was and is such an amazing resource for any independent perfumer, or anybody wanting to just experiment with perfume as a form of artistic expression. The in-person classes that they have, some of them look amazing. I mean, I can't get out to LA for a week and stay there for a week and go to these classes, but there are some that are like bucket list intensives, you know. But they also provide online courses and education, and I took a number of those and have kept in touch with some of the instructors who are perfumers themselves, who have their own brands, and the help and assistance that you can get from IAO and the relationships that you can create through the classes there are just fantastic. I looked into the company that made my first box of materials, and that was Synthusiasm. Synthusiasm is owned and operated by Sarah McCartney, who is a perfumer out of London and is kind of considered like the godmother of indie perfume. She's got a Patreon that I've been a part of almost a year now, and the insight that you get not only from her but from other DIY and indie perfumers that are also a part of it, and the experiences that they bring to the table are invaluable. So as far as like two readily available resources for anybody that might be interested, those two I highly recommend. Also books, Jean-Claude Ellena's Perfume, The Alchemy of Scent should be mandatory reading for anybody who wants to get into this industry, or if anybody just wants like to peer into the industry and see what this titan of perfume has created for himself, like how he's created his own map, really, on how to just workflow. Sure, flow. Yeah, we'll go with that. That is the least graceful description of the word flow that anyway. And Luca Turin's The Guide, Perfumers, The Guide, that helped me understand what I've been missing for the last 40 years. You know, seeing what has come before you when you have absolutely no idea. I mean, it is kind of just like doing your history homework. But you see examples of certain notes and accords that work together well or are reviewed well versus things that were not reviewed so well. I mean, you know,
More challenging.
just like, this is a boring one-note thing. Okay, well, unless I'm going for boring one note, then all right, I'll avoid that. I don't know.
Right.
But those books, and there are a ton of other books. Harold McGee's Nosedive was an amazing read because it broke down the elements of the elements. Like basically anything on Earth, it broke down the chemical makeup of things and what those chemicals smell like by themselves. And not just on Earth, but even space. Like he broke down what space rock smells like, what these, it just opened up my imagination thinking like, oh wow, okay. And I now have access to at least a handful of these things, and I can just, okay, I can tell a story. You know, if I'm telling a story through scent about say like a cannonball that was shot out of a ship in the 1700s. Okay, what is the chemical that makes lead smell the way that lead smells like? What was the cannon made out of? What was used as an accelerant to shoot the cannon out on top of rust? What is, if iron rusts this way, then what does this smell like? And if you wanted to make something that was like a photorealistic smell, you could. It's opening up your imagination like that I think allows a perfumer to have the most fun, but also get the point across. Set their story and make it clear.
What are some of the challenges that you've encountered as an indie perfumer, and how have you navigated those?
Math and spreadsheets were never my friends.
Same.
Yeah. So finding myself in a profession where they are used basically on the daily is not something I would have imagined myself ever doing. Thankfully, there are apps that can help. And there's some software out there that also can help when it comes to gathering all of the IFRA data and making sure that the amounts of everything are nice and safe, because you do that. That is something you need to do.
Yes. If for compliance,
Yeah.
bare minimum.
Yeah, IFRA compliance, bare minimum. The other big challenge and the other big hurdle has been imposter syndrome, because this profession is relatively new, I think, to Americans. Now, it's not to say that we haven't been doing it in some form or fashion, or at least somebody in American history hasn't been doing it in some form or fashion since the late 1800s. But as far as like indie perfumery goes and niche perfumery goes, it's relatively new. Everything that I've read or had access to read thus far usually says that the professional perfumer has to go to one of 3 different schools. 2 are in France, 1's in Switzerland. They have to go there for a certain amount of time to even become a junior level assistant for some other company making, smells for bleach. And then they don't even get to make their own creation for a decade. So, who am I to say who has been basically working on the job while trying to, memorize what things smell like, to not only birth but like age my nose to a certain level where I can put something together that I can realistically call perfume in a year and a half. So with all of that reading going, and then me just going, getting over that hurdle, you know? And that was one of the things that, you know, Synthusiasm kind of helped me with, was we have like a sniff, it's called like a sniffathon. And everyone who wants to get in on that basically can submit a perfume anonymously, and then we all get samples of everybody's perfumes, and then we all review them. And I was going to release these 2 launch titles anyway. Like I was just like, well, let's see what other perfumers think. And it was all favorable. So I'm like, I knew I liked it, and I knew that some of my friends liked it, but sometimes, you know, your friends kind of
Sugarcoat things. Yeah.
So to find other perfumers liking it and like being impressed by it, I was like, I think I'm on the right path. So yeah, like that, it took that to get me over that hump of imposter syndrome.
I think it's come up in several of the interviews, because in Goth Fragrance Dialogues as a series, we've had indie perfumers, we've had classically trained perfumers, we have people who aren't perfumers themselves, but either own a store or are creative directors. And there is that element of, similar to like fine art, historically, if you weren't an apprentice of a master, you weren't a true artist. And then at some point that switched, and it was, well, if you have access to materials and you have time to practice, or you have innate talent, you can be an artist. And I think that's kind of where we are in the perfume world, is now people are realizing that I can do this.
Yeah.
Some people better than others, but
I mean,
we are.
By all means, like, I understand why that path exists. You know, the professional path to be able to create smells for anything is a very helpful talent to have, especially if you're working to make those mass-produced fragrances that I found at the mall. Then there was the DIY independent route, which I took in the same way that I did with, you know, music that I made for years, and that way I get to make what I want. And, you know, if people like it, then good.
I think there's a place for both in the community.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the joy of exploring it. In this industry of established norms, how do you maintain kind of your own sense of authenticity to innovate and play, as you were saying?
I think that my circumstance is kind of, I don't want to say it's unique, but I'm coming from it relatively unscathed by any preconceived notions of what something is supposed to smell like. It's not, you know, going to ever be based on focus group materials or you know, trend forecasts. So because of that, I don't want to say ignorance is bliss, but because of that freedom, I think that I'm able to do something that will be atypical. And I don't want to, you know, say that I'm thumbing my nose at classical perfume structures, but when it comes to dupe companies and companies that literally base their releases on coattail riding the wave of a trend that somebody else started, yeah, that's not going to be a problem.
Right. Looking kind of towards, you mentioned a little bit around the other perfumers supporting your work. Do you find the community kind of welcoming and supporting of your brand?
The online community has been amazing. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I didn't know what to expect when I launched. I only had 2 things, so I haven't done like a lot of local stuff yet. Like, people have been enthusiastic about the ideas, but you know, usually with markets, you want to have more than just 2 titles. So I launched everything online, and once I launched, people just they started following, and they seemed to, like, something struck a chord with either my visuals or descriptions, and I couldn't have predicted it to be such an amazingly supportive community. Like, I've been part of many creative communities, but the amount of support that I got from the online fragrance community in such a short period of time, no less, it was really sweet.
That's
Like,
awesome.
yeah, there's this sense of fulfillment that I have felt from the support that I haven't felt before in any other thing. So, yeah, the online community has been great, and seeing where it goes from here, I can't wait.
Awesome.
Thank you, online community.
Yeah. Well, for the online community, do you have any advice for people that may be watching or listening that are aspiring perfumers looking to start themselves?
They say stop and smell the roses. Do that, and smell the geraniums and the magnolias and the honeysuckle bushes. Smell every single thing that you possibly can, and log it if you can. Write down what it makes you think of, how it makes you feel. Because one of the most important things that you can do when you first start out is know your materials backwards and forwards, in and out. Build a vocabulary. There are fragrance wheels and scent wheels that can take just general or broad descriptions and break that down into like 8 to 12 other things. Having a broader scent vocabulary is, I feel, critical in being able to express what you want your perfume to do as clear as it possibly can. And it helps you understand other perfumes as well, and just honestly understand the world a little bit more than you previously could. They say the sense of smell is like, the least, the least important. No. The sense of smell is one of the most important and overlooked senses. So if you're going into this journey, then yeah, bring your dictionary, bring your thesaurus, and bring your notepad and your nose.
Excellent. You have at least 2 things that you're working on. Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk about those and anything else that you have coming up?
Yes, I do. So Marginalia and Humidors of Perception were the 2 launch titles. There was going to be a third, which ended up being pushed back, and it's actually going to be the 4th. So let me talk about the 3rd first. The 3rd, since I said I would be releasing it in February, and tomorrow is technically February. I don't know if...
It'll be out. This comes out in March.
Oh, damn. All right, so rewind. So the 3rd release that should be out by now is Mushmallow, which I am incredibly excited about, and Josh is very excited about it too. And I can only have you to thank for starting that excitement among the online community, because your words and description of it were just so beautiful that, of course, people would be like, "Oh, yeah."
Yeah.
So thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, mushroom perfumes. They're too cool.
So Marshmallow will be available. The fourth fragrance, which was going to be the third fragrance, is a green incensey little number that I call Ryle. It's not a green chypre, so to speak, as it could very well be a tarnished brass chypre. And it's a coming-of-age tale of a young adventurer wandering off into a misty forest, coming to a clearing by the river, and then coming face to face with the beast of the woods. So it's that fight or flight moment captured, and that would make 4 releases. So I will likely make like a proper discovery set once Ryle is released. And then there are 4 other works in progress for this year.
Wow.
2 that I would like to have ready by the summer. 1 is possibly just going to be a limited edition for what will hopefully be my first market that I do at the East Nashville Tomato Arts Festival. So it's obviously going to be like a tomato freshie that has a twist. And I'm working on what will be Closet's first cologne. There's one other thing that kind of started off as a joke, which would be a good fall release, but I'm not really going to talk about it yet. And then another thing that I was hoping to have ready by the end of this year. I was hoping to have it ready by now, but it's called False Spring, and it will be a next year release, and it'll be our first floral.
Okay.
The idea behind that being, it's January and 60 degrees, but there's still snow from yesterday in the shade of the trees. There are buds on trees and a few things starting to bloom, but it's gonna snow again. It's false spring. Something that happens in the South, basically. It's happening right now.
Yes, actually.
So, yeah, it's that.
Very cool. So you have a lot coming up.
A lot coming up, and because Nashville is a city full of creatives, and that is a good thing. Depending on how this is edited. There's a new company that is launching events that will be based on books that use visuals and sounds and smells to create an experience for the people at the event. And I've been pinned to make some smells, so I'm looking forward to that.
That
as
sounds
well.
really fun.
Yeah. So yeah, when I find out more about that, I will definitely talk about it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, JK.
Thank you, Josh.
Can you tell the folks watching where to find you online?
Yes, I can. If you go to clstperfumes.com, that is the website where you can order anything. Also, if you mistype it and you go with the handle, which is CLST CLST Perfumes with no vowels whatsoever, you will still be redirected to the website. Or if you type in closet as the word perfumes, you will be redirected to the website. You got to think about these things. But yeah, Instagram at the moment, TikTok at the moment, and Blue Sky at CLST PRFMS.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Goth Fragrance Dialogues. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of fragrance and the incredible stories behind the scents that we explore. As always, if you want to learn more, be sure to check out the links in the description for more details and ways to connect with our guests. And don't forget to support their work. It's all about celebrating creativity and passion. If you're loving this content, regardless of what platform, please subscribe, that way you never miss out on a new episode. We've got more exciting stories, insights, and interviews coming your way. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Josh, your Goth Fragrance Bestie. Keep exploring the world of scent, stay inspired, and we'll catch you next episode.